Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
My people, it's time to move out. Move out.
Artlist.io.
My people, it's time to move out. Show 'em what we do now. They say that work seems so hard to follow. I am not a role model, only a teacher. Teach 'em when the school's out. Preach 'em and preaching to each.
Hello there and welcome to this week's edition of the Social Enterprise Show. I'm your host, Tracey Miller. Beverly Schwartz, the Vice President of Global Marketing at Ashoka, the world's largest association of social entrepreneurs, in her book Rippling, wrote, "If you want to do good, you have three choices. Become an activist or an advocate, become a service provider, which could be you become a doctor, a civil rights lawyer, or a teacher, or become a professor, researcher, or an academic. But now there is a fourth. Become a social entrepreneur." She further states that what attracted her to social entrepreneurs is how motivated they are, that social entrepreneurs often felt so strongly about something they gave voice to their values by translating them into action instead of ignoring the problem or complaining about it. They took the next step and they did something about it. They in fact said yes to themselves. Huge appreciation to Shemaine Chetu, who managed to get me a signed copy of Beverly's book. As always, I encourage you to reach out, get involved, and participate in the show. Send me an email or a voice note describing to me what your social enterprise is doing in your community and what kind of support you need. You may find the answer you seek through this network that I'm busy building here through this show. My email address is traceyleemiller@gmail.com. This is our 7th podcast. We've had a number of social entrepreneurs, academics, researchers, and commentators on the show. We spoke to David Blythe about purpose. Milandra joined us and delved into the tricky topic of value. And between Chapapi Makhato and Tumisho Marsha, we discussed the value of art in society. We had the award-winning app Finger Talk founder in the studio, Nick, and of course Liana Leonard, who is also the founder of Lieflappies and Bizblitz, join us and share their experiences as social entrepreneurs. Every week, we try to bring you content that is fresh, conversations that stimulate your heart and mind, and information that illuminate and shed some light on a murky and sometimes misunderstood topic and notion of social entrepreneurship. And today is no different. I'm joined in the studio by the CEO of Enactus South Africa, Letitia de Wet. And I know we are going to run out of time this week because not only of who Enactus is and what they do, but also because of the passion that Letitia has for this work. Enactus is an international nonprofit that brings together students, academic and business leaders who are committed to using the power of entrepreneurial action to improve the quality of life and standard of living for people in need. That description kind of sounds like the definition we use for social enterprises here on the show, which is, let me remind you, a social enterprise's primary objective is to address social problems or to address social problems through a financially sustainable business model where surpluses, if any, are mainly reinvested for that purpose. So Enactus is active on more than 1,710 campuses. They operate in 37 countries. This is a non-profit that creates economic opportunities in their communities. Enactus students apply business concepts to develop social enterprises that improve the quality of life and standard of living for people in need. More than 440 global corporate partners, 4,100 teams participating annually, more than 7 million hours volunteered annually, and more than 1 million lives have been impacted over a period of time. We spoke about purpose a few podcasts ago. Enactus states that their purpose is to enable progress through entrepreneurial action. Welcome, Letitia. That's such a long introduction, but I felt it needed to be said. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's fantastic to be here, and I'm also excited when you use that term, social entrepreneurship.
It sounds like this is exactly what Enactus is doing, but you're doing it within the university space. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So can you tell us, Letitia, how Enactus came about globally, because it's a global organization, and when it actually came to South Africa?
Okay, so, this program was established 37 years ago in the United States. And it was the work of a person that was really committed to change our continent in Ghana, that traveled to our headquarters, and they persuaded them to change, to start up a pilot and change that equation and include the continent into the then SIFE program. It was Students in Free Enterprise. So it was all about free enterprise.
So it was someone in Ghana that
Yes.
saw Enactus in the States and
Yes.
said, hey, we need this.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful.
And, I actually, he told me the whole story this past Enactus World Cup that we attended in Silicon Valley in October. He told me the story of how much effort they had, no money, no visa, but they went there and they presented to our global headquarters and they said, you know what, Africa needs to be on board. Mm-hmm. So that was fantastic. So then they piloted it in South Africa in 2001.
Okay. So did they go to Ghana first then, I'm imagining?
No, it actually was launched within Botswana, South Africa, and Swaziland.
Okay, so it's Botswana, South Africa, Swaziland, 2001.
Yes.
And are we still at those universities?
Unfortunately, Lesotho was later also part of it. Lesotho, unfortunately, was not viable. We also look at, whether we are sustainable as an organization. And unfortunately, Lesotho didn't make it through. But yes, we are still in all of those countries. As a matter of fact, we are in 10 countries in Africa. And I'm really pleased to work with each of those country leaders because, they all have this passion and we've got huge teams. As a matter of fact, 2 of our teams, made it through to the Enactus World Cup final round, and it was Egypt and Morocco.
I know you're very excited because you guys have just come back from that
Yes.
competition. Quickly tell us about that competition. It's called the Enactus World Cup. It took
Yes.
place 10 and 11 October.
Exactly. It was the 9th to the 11th of October. Okay. So we started out, with the opening rounds on the 10th. And it was amazing. We had fantastic people showcasing the work that they do across the world. We are 37 countries, as you've noted, that are participating in it. And we had national champion teams that participated for the World Cup. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, we didn't make it through. We were beaten by Morocco and they were in the finals. But, it was so worthy
That
to
sounds
be there.
very, very familiar. Morocco beat us. But what kind of project would beat a South African project?
Well, Egypt actually was second, so the first runner-up. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they changed an industry, and actually rescued it. So it's the jasmine industry, they were in oil production and exporting their products and produce out to global suppliers. But unfortunately, when they started to use pesticides, the oil quality deteriorated, and it actually left the farmers not willing to invest in that industry anymore. And so when the students spot this, they decided to actually bring them back on board. And so, they've impacted over 30,000 farmers. The way that they actually use pesticides, so they actually do it all organic now. And they introduce them to earthworm farming. So that's part of the bigger plan, and in that business is for them to then use earthworm, fertilizer. And it's potent and it's working, and they've got all of the oil production back to where it was.
So for someone who's never heard of Enactus and who don't really know what they do, let's use this example of Egypt. So Egypt, you say the Egypt students, because it's essentially
Yes.
students who are
Yes.
studying in different fields.
Yes.
There was a problem with a particular industry, and the Enactus came and brought the students together with these
Yes.
farmers. And through their studies and what they've learned and the new technologies that the students have been exposed to, were able to then bring that information to the community, to the farmers, and change the way the farming of jasmine happens. Is that right?
Exactly. So Enactus is actually, have a presence and a footprint at most universities in every single country. Obviously, in our country, we've got 24 public higher education institutions. We have also a footprint in some privates. So we've got 27 teams participating in our program, for instance. And then, our network is in a way, have people that are faculty advisors, it's academics that are at the university. So it's really to do that connection, So we've got a platform of networks. So it's the faculty advisors, they train the students, but they also need to give them an opportunity to apply the theory that they learn in classroom into the community. So it's really experiential learning. And so the students go into communities and we train them on how to do asset-based community development, how to do needs analysis, how to look at markets, and help the people and to find new avenues for their produce. So that's really what we do. And then obviously the competition element is extremely important, because we believe that if someone, in a business, as in business, competition encouraging people to innovation. And so the students are very innovative in the way that they actually take the community on board and help them to pursue their dreams. Mm-hmm. And so we capacitate the community. So the students are not part of that equation. So it's actually our communities that are benefiting because we skill them, we help them to open up new enterprises and get them on the road to success.
So often we have a student at university studying something that the parents or people in the community just don't understand or can't really connect with. Let's say robotics.
Exactly.
What would Enactus then find a way through a competition to bring what almost not commercialize but make functional the studying part of what the student is doing, like make it functional in community?
Exactly, and I think that is what is the beauty of this whole network of us. So the students can actually go to the level of the community. Sometimes they are illiterate, to actually bring it to them so that they can understand, show them in easy ways how to actually make use of this kind of new technologies. Mm-hmm. I just read an interesting article on the World Economic Forum in terms of their work and how they will look at new workforces. And a lot of companies said, in 2020 already, things will start to change. And by 2030, they will only, they will have to cut down on people. But then obviously there are much opportunity for people that are capacitated, and robotics is part of that, and the whole ICT sector.
And in fact, in my other life, we are now also looking at coding, and whether you have coding ability on your CV or whether you even just have a desire to want to learn how to code, because we are all looking at the workforce of the future.
Exactly, and that's what was for me amazing. Sometimes I think we work in silos, and there are so many good initiatives and NGOs working on this. I know there is a competition on coding, and they are actually teaching young kids, to code. That is amazing, So that is really where we need to focus, is to join hands and to drive this together, because that our impact is much bigger.
Absolutely. And how do you get do you always involve the entrepreneurship or the business school of the university, or is that where you step in? Absolutely
not. For us, it's about exploiting the whole student community to this program. I think, and I want to actually step back a little bit. I think in past days, it was actually only losers that would start a job. You can't find a job now. You need to actually create your own job. And, it wasn't something that was actually discussed at a dining table, But entrepreneurship actually changed everything, because it's now the people that are the go-getters, the people with changed mindsets. They are the entrepreneurs, and those are the people that are creating jobs for others. Mm-hmm. They actually have the most employees, even more than corporates. And I think that is important, to note that, entrepreneurship is core value of our organization, and we cannot step back, because we are not about handout. It's about capacitating people to sustain themselves and for a better standard of living. And then you obviously need to skill them appropriately.
Do you think that universities or tertiary institutions, business schools, still teach a very much for-profit model and there's very few of them that understand sort of this hybrid model that we're advocating, which is, yes, sustainable, but also social value?
You know, I do think that there is some new focus on this, and I think universities realize it. And I think over the past 2 years, we've seen with the Department of Higher Education also focusing more on, building entrepreneurs and also the network. And last year we actually had our first Lekgotla. It was in February here at in Mill Park, and it was a fantastic event where we actually brought together a lot of academics, and we looked at the academic in entrepreneurship, and obviously the NGOs were also part and parcel of it. And how do we incorporate it into the curriculum? And I think that is where the change needs to happen.
And what was the outcome of that Lekgotla?
Well, for the first time, the Department of Higher Education gave us an office that is focused on entrepreneurship in higher education.
Fantastic.
And so we've got task groups that are working over the past 2 years now, because now we're already in the next one, and we had our second one in Cape Town in June. So it's going really well. And so we've got an office which is based with Yusuf, which is the university's heads. And so now the VCs also realize, how important entrepreneurship is. And obviously now it's also focusing on entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial universities. Because obviously you cannot drive any university without also thinking entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And then obviously the community side is always, we are there to serve the community, and we need to give back to communities and capacitate them. And so universities are there to engage with communities. And so us as an organization makes the research that's done at universities relevant for communities.
I like that. Make the research that's done at universities relevant for communities.
Exactly.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation. What I'm really interested in is two things. Your competition, or your focus on competition, means that someone loses, which means that there's a community out there that essentially loses. How do we find them? How do we help them? And then the second part is, how difficult or how easy is it for you to raise the funding that you need, being Enactus? And how difficult or how easy is it for someone who's just starting out as a social enterprise, doing great work, but they just don't have that backing? When we come back, we continue our conversation with Letitia de Wet. My name is Tracey Miller, and this is the Social Enterprise Show.
Live from 27 boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.
This is what you missed on brandlive.co.za.
We're broadcasting live in one of the boxes at 27 boxes.
Hey, can I ask you something there? Can you please tell me, do you think the post-90s, did they really fully integrate,
Sure.
Since we're talking about integrating today, though.
But you do what? Civil engineering?
Civil engineering, yeah.
Okay, and how's that going for you?
It's okay.
So
It's
a whole
fine.
lot of studying?
School, it's a lot of studying.
And
I
banking
guess.
school, a lot of banking school.
I don't bunk school. I just don't go to school when they tell us not to go.
Lies.
I mean,
Well, no, I've seen this with my eyes. Lies.
Someone was saying, I'm sure there's 10 soapies now happening
Listen.
same time.
I'm gonna say something, right? That might
Say it.
That might sound like I'm shading or hating
Yeah.
or whatever. There's lots of work for actors right now, but lots of actors aren't working. Lots of people are acting.
Ooh. Insightful conversation.
This is what you missed on the Social Show.
My first question then is, where are these hubs of economic development? Which township do I find a hub of economic development? Why must, if the focus is really capacitating the disadvantaged, why must I climb onto
Travel.
3-4 taxis to get to a certain area? A certain area has got about 6 to even 20 of these, right? Coming from Alexander or Tembisa. So you then find that there is a township economy, but the people that are living within this township economy, that are starting businesses in this township economy, are not full participants of this township economy.
For more, go to www.brandlive.co.za.
Live from 27 boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.
I be it's time to move out. Move out.
Artlist
My
IO.
people, it's time to move out. Show 'em what
Welcome
we
again
do
to
now.
the
They say
Social
that
Enterprise
work
Show.
seems so
Robert Thibault once said, "People often ask me whether a particular change is possible. I respond by saying this is the wrong question. Instead, each of us need to ask where our commitment is and where we shall act. Once we are committed, we will find a way to be effective." Enactus is effective. It's been effective for quite a number of years. 37 years is a long time to reiterate, to iterate and, do something and get it right, get it wrong. But what about those social enterprises that also have really good ideas but don't have the backing? What can you, as the CEO of Enactus, share with those young startup social enterprises who also have this passion and motivation to do good, but, may not have some of the controls in place? And by that I mean compliance and certification, management, and all of those good things that we need to create sustainable social enterprises.
I think that is really what is making us successful. I think that is something that you can never just, underplay. So governance is quite important in this space. And so my recommendation would be, ensure that you are registered, for tax. Your company registration must be in place. I think if you will be shocked if you see how many NGOs that applies for funding doesn't report back to their funders. And for us, it's quite, a prestigious thing, to actually go back, report on our impact that we had, to ensure that we've got 18A certification. We are also evaluated by EmpowerDeck so that we can actually say, what is our social economic development portion, 100% Black economic empowerment is what we are. And that is a real value. And I think, if you go and you can say that you are working with so many Black people where we are empowering them to actually be sustainable in their own way, you actually can only win.
So there we have it. The advice for you as a young startup social entrepreneur: do not underplay the importance of governance.
Yes.
That is almost your first step. Make sure that you have tax clearance certificates. Make sure that you've got you registered. Make sure that you have all of the documents. Make sure you report back after you've received the funding.
And obviously, then I didn't even mention it, but obviously, financial record keeping and to be able to be audited. We are rigorously audited because, you owe it to your communities that you're serving and also to your partners to ensure that you've got proper audits in place and that you can actually go back to them and say, I've got a clean audit. It's for us important.
That's exactly it. So sometimes we make it really hard as social enterprises, as NGOs, or we make it hard to go out there and raise the finance that we need to run our programs because we don't do this part. We don't report back. We are not compliant. We don't have financial controls in place. Can I ask you another question, which I had around competitions? A couple of years ago, I started hearing sort of rumors around, do we really need competition? When there's a competition at a school, everybody gets a trophy. Like, are competitions still what they were? Are they still motivating, or are they just ways to exclude people who are not as capacitated as others?
I don't think so. I think competition has a definite place in any, business even. If you are in business, you're going to have competition and you need to be always one step ahead to stay in business. So that's why our program actually embraces competitions because with that, you get the best out of people. They will actually work harder and more smarter to ensure that they are that step ahead. And so, but I always tell our students that, and these communities that are capacitating, in our program, there are no losers. It's a learning curve, and that's the problem. People sometimes see failure as losing, but it's not. It's part of the learning curve, and you can decide whether you're going to actually stay as failure and see yourself as a failure, or are you going to actually take that opportunity and make a success of that and learn from your past experiences and implement it into the new you.
So when you say that you're not a loser, you may not have won this round or you may not have won this competition, there is there are other ways in which you win. You're learning new skills. Give me an example of a young person, a student whose life has been so changed by this program that what they've learned from Enactus, some of that community-based asset development principles, they're taking that forward into their current work.
You know, I've got actually so many of them that have, you know, enterprises that they've established. You know, some of them, like for instance, you know, I've got Setu Setsamba. He actually started a perfumery and he's he's in production at the moment. And what he did was he actually based his business model on very much similar than other, you know, perfume industries that we have in our country. If capacitating people to sell out his products. And also, you know, he ventured into the university system, and a lot of students, you know, are keen for cash. So he actually has a formidable enterprise that he actually established, but always giving back, you know, so giving them products so that they can actually have a startup pack, etc. But then also, you know, one of our first, you know, it's like one of the pioneering students is Edmund Sambu. He started off for 5 years. He worked at one of our local banks. He gained all of the experience that he wanted, and then he ventured out. He started out a magazine that is distributed in universities that guides people in terms of careers and, you know, giving them role models to look at, you know, and it's amazing and it's a huge success. And he's making his money from advertising, but always giving back. And that is the wonderful thing about social entrepreneurship. It's always looking back at your community. How can you distribute your wealth into them and capacitate them? And then, you know, I've got another girl from University of the Free State, Zimgita Nongela. She has her own IT company, but she's plowing back into our own organization, a very active alumni and giving back to us. So we've got amazing people that are working with us, and it's not about only careers, you know, it's actually a lifestyle, I would say.
I agree. I think my friends think I'm crazy about talking about the social entrepreneurship thing every week. We've got only a few minutes left. And thank you, Letitia. If you want to get in touch with Letitia, can I share your email address?
Sure, you can.
It's ldewet@enactus.org. Get in touch with her. Find out if you want your institution or you want to learn more about Enactus. If you want to support Enactus as well, also get in touch. And you can check them out on enactusza.org. My last and final question to you, Letitia, is how has working with Enactus for the last 12 years changed your outlook on South Africa?
You know, I think in terms of South Africa, we are at the moment in a not positive space. But if we can join hands, I think we can really change it over. And it's really about, you know, stay in focus. Don't see anything as failure, but as a learning opportunity. And there are lots of opportunity. You know, for us, it's about spotting opportunity and make the best of that thing that you see.
And that was the voice of Letitia de Wet. Thank you so much, the CEO of Enactus. In closing, I thank you. Really, really thank you.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this conversation. In closing, next week on the show, I'll be having a conversation with somebody I respect very, very, very much. His name is Sechaba Motsielwa. We're going to look at how corporates design their CSI programs and how you, as a social enterprise, can better position yourself to benefit from some of that social investment that's available. And I also want to leave you with a thought. He who has a why to live for can almost bear any how. Have a wonderful week and stay, and I wanted to say stay with me, but you know, it's time to go. Have a wonderful week and we'll catch up again next time.
Live from 27 boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.